Now let's talk about creating a product from another product. Sounds a bit confusing, right? But let me explain. Now, imagine you sell cake slices. Now, you probably don't mix and bake the individual cake slice, right? You most likely mix and bake a full batch for a cake and then cut it up into different slices and then sell those slices. So, in this kind of setup, you need to create a product for the entire batch and then you create another product for the cake slice and then link them together. Another example is pastries. For example, with meat pie, you probably sell individual meat pies on their own, right? But you don't mix and bake one meat pie per time. You're most likely mixing and baking a batch of meat pies and then selling them individually. So to get the cost of the individual piece, you create the base product, which represents the full batch, and then you create the individual piece, and then you link the individual product to the base product so that you can get the cost of the individual meat pie relative to the full batch. So let me show you how to set it up. So if you say add new product, let's set it from scratch. So let's plan this together. We're going to set up meat pie. And to set up meat pie, we need the pastry dough. We also need meat pie filling, which is going to have like the beef, the potatoes, and then you create the individual piece. All right, let's do that. And so if we say pastry dough, say continue, say we're going to create 500 grams of pastry dough. Let's just put the price at 0 because we are not selling the pastry dough. And we submit that. All right, so if you see what we have here, we have the pastry dough with set up for 500 grams. Now, if we say configure product, so what goes into the pastry dough? It's flour, butter, probably some sugar as well. That's cool. So if for flour, let's say I use 200 grams of flour of butter and 200 grams of flour, say 50 grams of sugar. Okay, so that should add up to close to our 500 grams of the mix. No add-ons. And for activities, we are just doing mixing and baking. So it takes me how much time to mix up the ingredients together. Let's say it will take me around 20 minutes to mix up the dough. And I save that. So if we say back to variance, we should see that it's costing us 2,500. All right. Now we have one more product to set up. That's the meat pie filling, right? All right, let's continue. And let's say I need a 300 gram filling name and I submit. All right. So I have a variant 300 gram. So let's configure it. What do we need for this? We need beef. Okay, we don't have it, so let's create it from raw material. Let's just call it beef. Okay, so let's say we buy it in grams. Let's say we buy 250 grams for 4,000 naira. Let's save that. All right, we have beef. We also need a little bit of potatoes. So let's create that here from raw material. Let's say potatoes. Now, this one is a bit tricky. You could set up your potatoes as pieces. You could also set it up as grams. I always prefer to use grams where possible because it means that I can be as exact as possible. If I use pieces, it means that sometimes I'll have a big piece, sometimes the piece can be smaller, and it's difficult to know exactly how to measure the piece. So it's up to you. You use whatever is easier for you. In this case, I'll just use piece. So I'll set it to unit. So I'll set that to 1 unit and I buy 5 of it. And set the amount to 3,000. Okay. What else goes into the filling? Less oil because we're going to fry it, right? Okay, we don't have oil in our store. So let's create a new one from raw material. Let's say vegetable oil. And this would be in liters. Let's put 1 liter of oil costs us 6,500. Let me save that. All right. So you can put in as many different components that goes into your filling. I'll stop here for now. And so for the 300 grams, I'd say I'd use 150 grams of beef. I'd use 2 potatoes. I'd remember to change this to ml to make it easy. And let's say I'd use around 100 ml of oil for frying. For add-ons, nothing right now. And then for activities, I'll do mixing and baking and cooking. Okay, so I'll say I do around 10 minutes of cooking and then 5 minutes. This is for the chopping and the mixing of the pieces together. So I'd say this should be around 10 minutes. And then I'd save. So that's how we set up the meat pie. And so if we see here, we have the cost price of it for 300 grams. So now we have the two base products we need for our meat pie. And the next step is to create the actual meat pie. And so if we say create product from scratch, call it meat pie, continue. So now let's say we have two sizes of meat pie. We have the regular size that we sell for 1.5, and we have the mini that we sell for 9.50. And submit. And so if we go to configure, what we need to do now is link it to our base products, which is the pastry dough and the meat pie filling. So if we come here and we say create a new store item, here we are going to create it from a product. So what we're actually doing here is we're taking the pastry dough, we're going to add it to the store, and then we'll add it to the product, right? And that's simply just selecting pastry dough here, select the variant, and here this is very important. You need to set the total size of the batch as the measurement here, and that's very easy because we already called it 500 grams. So we'll just set 500 and select grams, and we save. So that adds the pastry dough to the store and then links it up to the product here. One more thing we should add is the meat pie filling. Same thing, from a product we select meat pie beef filling, select 300 grams, set the total batch measurement to 300 grams as well, and we save. Okay, so now we have our base products linked up already. Next thing we want to do is just set the measurement. Now, one good way to think about it is, what's the total size of the batch? 300 grams. How many pieces can you make from it? So for example, let's say I can make 20 mini pies from the beef filling of 300 grams. So I'll just divide 300 by 20 to get 15 grams. So I'll save that as 15 grams. Similarly, for 500 grams, I'll divide 500 by 20 to get 25 grams. And then for regular, let's say for regular meat pie, I'm creating 10 regular meat pies from 300 grams. So yeah, that would be 30, 300 divided by 10. And yeah, 500 divided by 10 would be 50. And so that's a way I've figured out to set up the measurements in a way that is very easy for me to handle. Another thing you can do is set the activities. So for my meat pie, I'm going to do some packaging when I deliver it to the customer. So I'll set up packaging, and let's say it takes me 5 minutes to package it, and 5 minutes for the regular. And that's it.